American Industry Abroad, from the New York Times, dated January 11th, 1859. Recorded for LibriVox.org by Leanne Howlett. American Industry Abroad. Americans and Their Inventions and Doings in Europe. From our own correspondent. Paris, Thursday, December 23, 1858. In a late letter I gave you the history of the triumph of certain modifications in surgery introduced into France by American surgeons. I propose today to give you a résumé of American industry abroad, giving the place of honor, on account of its extent, to dentistry. I ought to mention first, however, that Dr. Boyman's operation has been adopted so rapidly that it is declared by the best surgeons of Paris as the only operation to be practiced hereafter for the malady which it is destined to remedy, and we thus see a young American surgeon introducing into France, and at the great seat of medical science, a certain cure for a malady which the most distinguished surgeons of 2 centuries have sought for with but indifferent success. In their notices of Dr. Boyman's operation, however, the surgeons who have thus far lectured upon it have not failed to give credit to other surgeons who were more or less successful in the cure of the accident in question. Thus in Europe, Dieffenbach and Joubert have been particularly successful in its treatment, M. Joubert claiming to cure 1/3 of his cases by a very simple operation, while in America, Dr. Hayward of Boston, as long ago as 1828, performed the operation successfully, and to him is due great credit for the modifications he introduced. To Dr. Sims, also of New York, credit is given for his improvements in this operation within late years, while astonishment is expressed that Dr. Sims should so singularly designate himself in a public address as the instrument especially selected by Providence to discover a cure for a malady which had been already cured even in his own country while he was yet in his infancy. I ought to mention here also that the practice of local etherization by means of electricity is becoming general as well in surgery as in dentistry. It is felt that all that is required to generalize this practice is a better knowledge of the particular cases to which it is adapted, and of the manner of applying it; and regret is expressed by the French surgeons that they have not access to the experiments and the experience of American surgeons. I will not pretend to explain why dentistry in Europe is so far behind that in the United States. It is most singular that in France, where surgery and the accessories of the toilet have been brought to the highest perfection, the art of the dentist should have been left so completely in the rear. Until very lately the art was ranked among the lowest of trades. A dentist was in fact but a puller of teeth, and one of the commonest expressions in French is, even to this day, "Il me comme un arracheur de dents." He lies like a dentist or a tooth-puller. It was not until American dentists settled in France that the art was at all respected, or indeed deserved to be respected. Mr. Brewster was the pioneer of American dentists in Europe. He settled in Paris in 1836 and soon became the dentist of Louis Philippe, the Tsar Nicholas, and other monarchs. He was bought out by Mr. Thomas W. Evans of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in 1850, who, with his brother Theodore, now continues the business. These gentlemen not only maintain the position ceded them by Dr. Brewster, but they have extended it. They are the dentists to the courts of France, Russia, Bavaria, Würtemberg, and, I believe, of Belgium and Saxony. With such high protection it may be readily conceived that the practice of these gentlemen is immense. Besides the Legion of Honor granted to the elder brother by the Emperor of France, both the brothers have received decorations and rich gifts from the other monarchs by whom they are employed. They have just built on the Avenue de l'Impératrice a private residence, which is an ornament to that new and elegant thoroughfare. Mr. James Fowler, formerly a partner of the deceased Harvey Burdell, afterwards established in Bleecker Street, New York, came to this city 4 years ago and went into business as a dentist on the Boulevard des Italiens in partnership with a French merchant by the name of Prater, the latter furnishing the funds for the establishment of the house. At the end of 3 years, however, Mr. Fowler sought and obtained before the tribunals a dissolution of the partnership, and at once established a new house in the Place de la Madeleine. Since his residence in Paris, this gentleman has made several pieces in gold for the replacement of lost parts, which excited the astonishment and the admiration of the Academy of Medicine and of the entire faculty of Paris. Among these were an entire lower jaw in gold with the teeth affixed, several upper jaws, obturators, etc. Although not new in America, it was the first time any successful attempt of the kind had been made in Europe, and Mr. F. is now in the enjoyment of a first-rate reputation and practice. Mr. Prater obtained a workman from the United States of the name of Fowler, and is continuing the business at the old place under the name of Fowler and Prater. Mr. Horner of Philadelphia is a partner in the long-established English house in the Rue de Luxembourg, which now bears the name of Stevens, Watson, and Horner. This is the largest and richest dental establishment in the world, its income reaching $60,000 a year. Gold work, however, has only been introduced into this house since the entrance of Dr. Horner. Previously their artificial pieces were made of hippopotamus and tyre, and decayed teeth were filled with amalgams, the ancient French and English system. Dr. Gage, formerly of Mobile, has also established himself in Paris as a dentist, and like the other is doing a good business. Mr. Potter, an American dentist, who has practiced in Bombay and in Lisbon, has been for some years established in this city, and lately took into partnership a dentist of New York, Mr. Crane. Dr. Parmley, formerly of New Orleans, an elder brother of Dr. Eleazar Parmley of New York, has been practicing dentistry for 3 years past upon children in the schools of Paris and London till an attack of typhoid fever, followed by partial paralysis, disabled him from the active pursuit of his profession. He continues to reside in Paris, however, and gives advice to families and schools in regard to the care of the mouth in young people. A gentleman who announces himself to the public as an American dentist, Dr. Koth, formerly of the United States, late dentist to Her Majesty the Queen of Spain, has established himself in Paris within a month. Dr. Koth, according to his circular, speaks English, German, Spanish, and Swedish, but judging from the doctor's name, we think he ought to have commenced his enumeration of languages with the Swedish. As I was passing rapidly in a carriage, a few days ago, through an obscure quarter of the Faubourg Saint-Germain, I had a hasty glance at a sign which had evidently just come from the painter's hands, and which bore the words, "Dentiste American," preceded by a name of the purest Gallic origin. So you see how the current is running. So widespread is the reputation of American dentistry that the teeth of nearly every monarch in Europe are filled, pulled, and replaced by Americans or soi-disant Americans. Thus, as I have already mentioned, the Evans of Paris are the dentists to the courts of France, Russia, Bavaria, Württemberg, and some other smaller states. At Rome, Dr. Burgess, an American, is the principal dentist. At Madrid it is Dr. McKeon, another American. The principal dentist of Berlin is Dr. Abbott, of Bangor, Maine, while the court dentist is a German who studied in America, and who calls himself, in consequence, an American dentist. At Vienna, where it is almost impossible for a foreigner to get permission to do business, Dr. North, also of the state of Maine, has rapidly gained the first position among the aristocracy, although he has not yet arrived at the court. When he first went to Vienna, Mr. North was obliged by the police restrictions from giving any publicity, either by advertisements or by a sign at the door. While stowed away privately in the upper part of a house, wondering whether his enterprise was going to fail or succeed, he was one day surprised at receiving the visit of Prince Lichtenstein, who came to get work done. The American complained of the rigors of the police, and the Prince said to him, "Never mind the police. Take a house to suit you, put your sign out, and if they trouble you, come to me." Mr. North did as the Prince advised. The Prince sent his daughters and others of his relatives and acquaintances, and from that day the fortune of Dr. North was a fixed fact. He numbers now in his protectors not only the Lichtensteins, but the Metternichs and the Schwarzenbergs. In St. Petersburg the aristocracy employ 2 Irishmen, brothers, who studied their profession with Dr. Brewster at Paris, and who call themselves American dentists. The principal dentist at Hamburg is Dr. Cohen, who studied in America and calls himself an American dentist. The brothers Tellender, who studied dentistry in New York, do the court and the principal business in Stockholm and Christiania, the capitals of Sweden and Norway. There are a few other dentists scattered through the German Confederation, Germans by birth, who received their professional education in the United States and who call themselves American dentists. At London, Mr. Rann, an American dentist, has rapidly reached a large practice in exclusively aristocratic families. Another American, whose name I forget, has also arrived at a large practice in London. At Manchester there has been an American dentist for a good many years. This closes the chapter on dentistry. 2 American physicians are in practice in Paris, Dr. Bigelow of Boston, and Dr. Billard of Philadelphia, both graduates of the School of Paris. The latter gentleman, however, is of French origin. He was 2 years house physician in the wards of Dr. Trousseau at the Hôtel Dieu. Both these gentlemen are doing well, but fortunately for the small American colony in Paris, their business is not confined exclusively to their countrymen. We have no American lawyer in Paris, although we need one. But we have 2 ministers and 2 places of worship regularly established. The chapel built by the Americans in the Rue de Berry last year continues under the pastoral charge of the Rev. Mr. Seeley. The Episcopalians, however, have organized a congregation and secured a place of worship in one of the upper rooms of the Church of the Oratory in the Rue Saint-Honoré. From a dozen members 3 months ago, this new congregation has reached nearly 100. It is called the American Episcopal Chapel in Paris, and its pastor is the Rev. W. O. Lamson, late of St. Paul's Episcopal Church, New York. The number of American artists now in Paris is extremely limited. Mr. Kellogg is still occupied on Oriental subjects. Mr. White is painting a picture for the State of Maryland, Washington resigning his commission. Mr. May has a variety of subjects on the easel. Mr. Cranch has gone to Italy. Mr. Fagnani, the sculptor late of New York, has fixed himself permanently on the Champs-Élysées and is engaged on busts. Mr. Thompson, the American photographic artist and photographer to the Rothschild family, continues on the Boulevard des Italiens. An American daguerreotypist has lately established himself in the Rue des Faubourgs Poissonniers. Of bankers we have in Paris 3 American houses, John Monroe and Company, Lansing Baldwin and Company, and Green and Company. The latter house, which suspended 2 years ago, will resume business again the 1st of January at the old place, Place St. George, under the title of Vanderbrock, Green and Company. Since the Great Exhibition of 1855, several American inventions are manufactured on a large scale in France. Of these the most important are McCormick's and Manny's reapers, the vulcanized India rubber of Goodyear, which has acquired an immense extension and employs daily several thousand men, the sewing machines of Singer and Grover and Baker and Company, and of Wheeler and Wilson, Tucker's artificial marble, Pitt's threshing machines, Chamberlain's cork cutter, and a variety of other inventions. End of article. This recording is in the public domain.